Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I am so honored to be joined by Marla Mervis-Hartmann. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Kelly, have been enjoying your podcast. I think you have great guests on, so I'm honored to be a part of it. And I love that you come on and share like your little bits of wisdom. I feel like that's been really helpful for me, just the little things that you're sharing. So yeah, it's great.
Oh, well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. And I'm so grateful for you listening. And what I want to do, I would love to hear more about you and your story. And you help such a tremendous group of people. And I would love to hear what is your backstory that led you to helping the people that you do today?
Yeah. So as you said, I'm creator of Love Your Body, Love Yourself, and I got there because of dealing with disordered eating, eating disorder, a lot of negative body image. Now, my story isn't something that's like original or unique. What I find is a lot of women have very, very similar stories to me, right? The binging, the over obsessing about their bodies, the restricting, the binging, the purging, right? I was an over exerciser, and really my life got really, really small. And the way that I coped with my life and any sort of stress was through dieting or binging or using my body, bringing myself to just being really mean to myself and pushing myself and pushing myself. And I was always someone who was very active and but I wasn't in my body. I didn't have a relationship with my body. I moved my body around with a lot of control. And I didn't allow it to say, I'm hungry. No, you're not hungry. You're supposed to eat at this time, right? Or, oh, you're full. Oh, no, 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 we have to keep eating, right? So, oh, your body wants to rest. Oh no, we said we're going to go for a run and you just overate, so you have to go for that run. So, a lot of disassociating from my body. And, I hit many bottoms, but the bottom that got me to the place of realizing that my issue wasn't about my body and my food was when I hit that perfect number. I hit the number that was like everything was supposed to be okay. And when I hit that number on the scale, it was like I realized my life was like crap. I
Mhm.
was so uncomfortable in my body and my life was small and it was just like, wow, right? And it's like, you think you're going to have that hallelujah moment. And it was like, brought me to my knees. And it's like, oh, this isn't a food and body issue. This is a deep inner issue. And so I went on a long journey of recovery. And at that time, there weren't a lot of people like me. There wasn't social media. There wasn't all the resources. And so I kind of had to piecemeal my recovery together. And so, which has been helpful because now I know from the inside out how to support other people. So people come to me because they're struggling. They need to figure out how to be with their body. They're usually emotionally eating or they're emotionally dieting or they're restricting. They're just doing all the things and they're like, my life is getting small and I want to have a life. And so that's what brought me to where I am right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. And so many things that you said very deeply resonate with me. And I think so many people who listen to this can very much relate to that dissociation where you are just suppressing your body signals and telling yourself to do certain things and keep this regimen. And something that really stuck out to me is when you said you hit that number and it's that like realization that that wasn't going to bring you happiness and joy, but yet so many of us can get stuck in this trap of expecting the external world to give us that, and when we do all the things that we thought would bring that and then it doesn't come, it's almost like a double whammy because now you've gone through all that work and effort to get to that place. And
Yeah, or you get there and everyone's giving you acknowledgement, and then you have the
yes.
fear of losing it. And then so you're still not free because now
Hmm.
you're obsessing on how do I stay here so that I can keep getting the acknowledgement.
Yes,
So it's
totally.
like it never really
Hmm.
meets the deeper part. And the deeper part is the deep acknowledgement of self and the
Hmm.
deep love for self and the deep compassion for self.
Absolutely. And how did you start to create that connection? Because it's like when you're in that so deeply and you're relying on the kind of that external validation, how then do you give that to yourself and tune into yourself when you're so disconnected? I find so many women that I've worked with, they're so disconnected from themselves. They don't know how they feel. They don't know what their body needs. They don't know really anything because they have suppressed that connection for so long. How did you start to cultivate that within yourself?
Well, I think it's a slow burn,
Mm,
right? It's something that is literally like the most practical way to say it is, okay, like everyone, someone who's listening right now, like, yeah, I don't know how to do that. Okay, well, let's just take a moment and let's just breathe, right? Let's put our hand on our heart and, even just like that one breath, and it can still be like, oh, right, the mind's going, but like the more we're slow down and be present, and it can be as simple as like, what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I tasting in my mouth? What am I smelling? Right? Like even like coming back to like really coming back to basics.
mhm. Yeah.
What is right now?
Mhm,
And then that is like, where's my breath?
mhm,
What is my mind telling me? So it becomes more and more of an awareness that it becomes a muscle,
mhm,
right? So when we're spinning out, we can bring ourselves back to that present moment. Now, I don't think that's always easy because sometimes the present moment um, has a lot of just a lot in it, right? I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing that. My mind is saying this. My body's saying that. It's when people say just get present, right? It's like, what does that even mean? And how
mhm,
do I do that? And I don't even want to,
mhm,
right? Like I know for me, I struggle with a lot of fatigue, and I will sometimes drop into my body. I'll lie down and I'll drop in. And the first layer that I drop into is like this fatigue that feels uncomfortable. And so I notice I'll kind of come up and I'll be in my mind so I don't have to feel it. And so I'll kind of bounce back and forth. Okay, let me feel that for a moment. Then I'll just kind of come back up. And then slowly and slowly, that discomfort, I can hold the discomfort. I think of it, um, I wrote a book just recently called Befriend Yourself. And it's all about how to become our own best friend. So when we think about a friend being with us when we're uncomfortable, that's what we're really learning how to do. We're learning how to be with ourselves the way a friend would. A friend would listen, a friend would care, a friend would show up, a friend would, you know, help us when we need some support.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
sometimes that idea of becoming your own best friend, we can kind of wrap our mind around.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that concept because it is if we're so far in it, it gives us that next layer to be just a little bit outside ourselves when you talk about being your own friend of like, what would someone do for me and how can I do that for myself? And I love that idea of it. when when you're going through something like that and there's like a propensity to numb yourself either through like social media or eating or yeah like or exercise or anything that's very distracting, TV, whatever it is, how and I love the ideas that you gave, the breath work and the tuning into your senses. How do we recognize some of these patterns that we just automatically go into? Like we feel that discomfort and we go scroll, or we feel that discomfort, we go right to the cabinet. How can we start to change that behavior where we go right to what's familiar?
Right. Well, I think pain is a really good motivator.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. And what I see is a lot of people come to me because they've been emotionally eating for a long time and they're noticing how usually it's because they've gained weight. Right. And now they're not getting away with it. Right. Or they're noticing how it's creating havoc in their life. Right. Or they're constantly scrolling and it's messing up their brain and they're not sleeping very well because they're addicted to scrolling right before they go to bed, or they're eating right before they go to bed and it messes up their belly, like all the things like that. And so pain is that motivator. And this is the thing, it doesn't have to get like my relationship with my body and food got really, really bad.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to get horrible in order to know that you have an issue and to know that you could use some support around it, because it still takes away our life force. It still takes away our life, our connection to others, our ability to be seen and out there in the world. So I think that pain is that. And then also, when you have a deep passion for life and you're like, I want to make shit happen. And I notice that I'm not doing these things because I'm over here doing these things. I'm over here with the food. I'm over here obsessing about my body. I'm over here over exercising or binging or whatever that is. That can be that wake up call of like, oh, this is getting in the way. And so now we got to look at that, right? So lots of times people will be like, I need to fix the food. I need to fix the food and I need to fix my body. They think that that is the solution, and it's not. It's not the solution. The solution is to look at why we're using these things. What is the underbelly? No, there is a balance in that, right? There are some practical ways to be with our food. There's some practical ways. And at least what I have seen is it's a deeper journey. It's a deeper journey of exploration. It's a deeper journey of like, where's my wounding? Where is this coming from? Why am I not wanting to be with this part of me? What is scary here? What is uncomfortable? Because diet culture tells you, just find another diet.
Yeah.
We're in that world where it's so normalized. It's okay for you just to, find your solution in losing weight or that next fitness thing or the next, favorite food regimen or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of money to be made in the industry by making you feel like you're not enough. If you feel like you're not enough, you end up searching for something outside yourself and then you spend the money. And there's a lot of that messaging to make you feel like you're not enough. And if you're already susceptible to that or you're not feeling like you're worth, you can see how this can easily spiral into that place.
Absolutely. And then this is the issue. People think this was my journey. I thought that if I thought I was worthy and I accepted my body, that meant that I was going to just like abandon myself and just eat a whole bunch of food and gain a whole bunch of weight. And so there is that like, oh, if I feel like I can accept my body the way it is right now, it's like kind of that all or nothing experience. And there's another way here. It's not dieting or it's not this black or white thing. There's a in between here. And the in between is I accept myself where I am and I begin to come back to myself so that I can actually listen to my authentic truth around my body, around my food. Now that can be scary because we may not trust our body and we may not trust our food. And so it can take some time to figure that out, right? Like, how do I trust my cues? Because sometimes when we've been in a lot of restriction, there is that moment where we kind of need to feed ourselves, right? We need to, and that can be scary for someone. So that's why having someone to go through these moments can be super, super helpful.
Absolutely. And it's like no matter where you are in your journey, like we're all in a healing journey in some way, shape, or form. And there's always an importance to have somebody hold space for you, no matter where you are. If you've been on your healing journey for years, it's just having somebody hold that space and see what you're going through from an outside perspective is so incredibly helpful in those moments.
It really is. And I don't know how people do it on their own. I mean, I don't know if you can go. I mean, I think there's an importance of being sovereign and your own authority and to be able to, like, when I'm able to hold space for myself, like that's beautiful. And for those deeper parts of me, it's I need that. I need someone that sees me and that says, I know that you're in pain, but I see the fullness of who you are. And that place that feels dark or uncomfortable is a small part of you. right? It's not, you know, they're still holding me in the light. They're really still seeing me. That's a
Absolutely.
beautiful place.
Do you mind going into that a little bit more? Because I know you talk about how, with spirituality and how the healing aspects of spirituality with food and your body. Can you talk about that a little bit more and how that plays a role, maybe for somebody who hasn't explored that aspect of themselves? How can they start to explore that for their own healing?
Yeah. So for the person who's out there who is on a spiritual journey and who has a connection to God, spirit, Mother Nature, all of those things, I've heard it so many times. They're like, oh, you mean I can bring that into my relationship with food? I can bring that into my relationship with my body. I'm like, yeah, right? Like, absolutely. Especially if you're struggling, like bring in the light,
Mhm.
bring in like in those moments where, I don't know how many times I got on my knees and I'm just like, I have no idea how to do this. This is so painful. I need help here. Right. And so to call on a power that's higher than myself, to call in an energy of love, a higher vibration of love, because it truly is what we're all looking for, right? Is love. At
Mhm.
the underbelly of it all, it is the love frequency that's wanted. And so sometimes when I'm in that space where I can't conjure up love for myself, I know it's there. It's like calling on God, spirit, and calling on the essence of me that always is that.
Mhm.
Right. And so when I can call on that, then that actually regulates our nervous system,
Mhm.
brings us back into present moment, calms us down, takes care of us, right? And it's knowing that we're not doing it on our own.
Mhm.
And so I've been doing Reiki for over 20 years, and I found Reiki um, right at the beginning of my recovery. And for those who don't know, Reiki is an energy healing modality and a spiritual practice that is the energy of unconditional love. And so it releases stress in the body, so the body heals itself. So stress meaning physical stress, emotional stress, spiritual stress, mental. That was the other one.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so when we think about releasing all those, we come back to ourselves. We come back to our authentic self. And our authentic self, our soul expression of who we are, knows how to care for us, knows how to bring in compassion, knows how to love. And so that's what we're doing. We're coming back to that part of ourselves. And that part of ourselves has passion for life. And that part like is like, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like one thing that, going through my own journey and was that I didn't realize how much energy I was relinquishing to it. It consumed everything in my world. Like it was the top priority. And it's like I didn't realize how much was being spent into that until I started devoting energy in other places. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you don't realize how consumed you get until you can remove yourself and see yourself from the outside a little bit. It's amazing.
Yeah. Like I can remember being like, well, what am I going to think about?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
am I, it's that void, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that void can be kind of scary,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also can be pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It can
Yeah.
be that exciting space of like, ooh, what's coming?
Mm-hmm.
What is next? What is there? Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what I love is that you took something that was so painful and created a gift out of it in that now you're helping other people and you uniquely understand this in a way because you've lived it. And I really truly believe we're here to help serve the past version of ourselves. So I love that you are taking that and now being able to help other people who are going through this themselves.
Yeah, because I've had so many times people will be like, I know this sounds crazy. And I'm like, oh gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like that
Yeah.
weird sort of thing that we do with our food or the way we think about things or the fear that comes up. It's like, I've been there. I know all of these places that are squirrely and uncomfortable and feel like you're kind of losing. I mean, I used to feel like I'm kind of losing my mind or like, what's wrong? Really, the feeling is, what's wrong with me? And
Mm-hmm.
when that can be normalized And that can be like, oh, I got you. I understand. And not only do I understand, but I understand where you are. I actually know how to get you. I knew how I got myself out of that, and I can hold space to get you out of that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like that's why these conversations are so important because anyone who hears this and maybe is resonating with everything you're saying and understands that and saying, "Oh my gosh, I finally feel seen and heard in my life and I'm not alone in this." It's so eye-opening and I so wish these conversations happened 20 some years ago when I was going through it because this would have helped tremendously to understand that you're not the only one experiencing this because it is such a lonely journey. And often you hide it from some of the people closest to you because of a lot of shame that builds
Shame.
up around it. Yeah.
Yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of shame builds up,
Mhm.
and then it feels really isolating.
Mhm.
And then that brings you more into whatever behavior
Mhm.
that you're in. And
Yeah.
then there can be, and I touched on this and before, it's like, it's not that bad,
Mhm.
right? Well, I don't have a full-on eating disorder,
Mhm.
or I don't, I'm not completely overweight, or I'm not super, super thin. So
Mhm.
how could I even justify getting support around this?
Mhm.
And I think when we think about the moments in our life that we're missing out on, right? The moments of connection with family and friends, the moments where we hide instead of being seen in our work,
Mhm.
right? And when we think about those and these, as they add up in our life, we start to get further and further away from what we want to create. And then that's where what we were talking about earlier. It's just like, I don't even know how to come back to myself. Like, who am I?
Mhm.
Because we've been living away from our own desires,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And listening to
absolutely.
other people's, I mean, I'm like, you look up people pleasing in the dictionary, it has a picture of me, right? Like,
Mhm. I'm probably right next to you.
oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And once you get so used to living for other people and what other people expect of you and the societal, desires, and then it's like you don't even question what you want in your life. And you can very much easily get lost in that whole realm until you, like you're saying, the pain becomes so much that you almost have to face yourself in that aspect.
Yeah, I think that's a big journey. I feel like I've really been learning over the years, and I'm 51, so I'm in perimenopause. So during that part, like different hormones get activated, and you kind of have that like it's great. There's
Hmm.
like parts of me that I'm accessing that's just like I'm finding my no and I'm finding my yes in a wonderful way. And I'm also aware of where that is still showing up in the programming of people pleasing. And not even just the programming of people pleasing, but the realization of looking back and being like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to do
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
Like this is still here.
Hmm.
And that's painful.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you for sharing that because there's no switch that everything is just great and life just changes. It's a practice. It's an ongoing journey of showing up for yourself every day and recognizing these things and really shining a light on them. So I appreciate you sharing that. And what I would love to hear from you is like, what are some practices that you do on a daily basis to ensure that you're still showing up for yourself and you're still honoring yourself, you're still connecting with your body and continuing on your healing journey?
Yeah, my so I do I'm like I have so many practices that I do.
Mhm.
I am kind of I've just along my journey have been so I guess the void for me of like not doing the food and the body craziness has been like how can I support myself, right? Like so I'll kind of get into different sort of meditation practices or breath practices or movement practices or gratitude practices.
Mhm.
And so, right now, before I get out of bed and I sleep outside.
Mhm.
I'm in Maui, so I sleep outside. So I wake up and just kind of look up and I'm there. And I will feel into my day and I'll feel into all the people that I'm going to be in touch with. And I just send love to everyone and get into that kind of love vibration. And then I just go into gratitude. And then I, have a little gratitude practice. But, I move my body daily. And, depending, I think in the beginning of my journey with food, I always had a plan around my food.
Mhm.
It wasn't like that strict plan, like I have to follow this thing, right? It was just more like, how can I make sure that I'm nourishing myself and that I'm haven't gone for too long without food,
Mhm.
right? Like, so I leave the house in the morning. I have my breakfast, I got my lunch, I got my snacks. And that's
Mhm.
an important piece for our physical body, for the mind to know that there's food, for the nervous system to be regulated. And so I think that's really important for for us as human beings to make sure that we are nourished from a
Mhm.
grounded sort of place, right?
Mhm.
And it's not in that scarcity space.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Um, so that's a big piece for me. And I make sure that I have moments in my day that I can rest, that I can get horizontal.
Mhm.
So I have, after I'm done here, I have a biomat. I'm going to go lie on my biomat. And so those moments are really important for my body to know that I'm not going to be running around all day.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I just know where physically I know where my body is right now. It will crash.
Mhm.
Cancel that, but like I just know.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's just like honoring yourself and recognizing your needs. And it's when you've, spent so many, or, not you, but like other people have spent so many years abandoning themselves. And maybe, you in the past have abandoned yourself. That just puts your system in survival mode of like, oh my gosh, when is our next meal? When do I get to rest? When do I get to stop? And then it just perpetuates that cycle of feeling like you have to keep going. And that's just how we're primitively wired. It's something that we have within us that like food is scarce. We're going to be in that survival mode. We get that stress response and then the hormones go and it just creates this whole cycle. So I love that you shared that, like making sure that you have food available to you and making sure that you have those rest breaks in your day and making that
Absolutely.
non-negotiable and not just brushing that aside, that is just as important as doing the work or whatever else that you have planned in your day. I think it's a beautiful example.
Yeah, it really is. And we each know what we need,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes, some people will be like, well, I don't have time for that. I can't do that. Well, then are you in the car and you're driving? And then are you listening to another podcast and shoving that information in your head? Are you calling someone? Are you trying to, like, can you sit in the car in silence and allow yourself to be just with yourself for 5 minutes? Like, these moments of emptiness, they can really fill us up. So
Hmm.
you go to the stoplight and you don't check your phone. You just consciously say, I'm sitting here with myself. And that builds on itself and can be really, really powerful.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our brains are constantly overstimulated by
Mhm.
constant information and everything that is going on. And we filter out a lot of that. But if we're not actively suppressing that, then we're just continuing on that cycle. And so I love those beautiful examples because you're so right. So many people will be like, oh, they can because they have this. You can make excuses for yourself of why you can't. But here are just some simple examples of how you can build it in, even if you are a working mom or you're a business owner, whatever you're doing, there's ways to integrate those little moments in your day and they make a tremendous impact in your overall well-being. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing those.
Yeah. And maybe it's not even rest. Maybe it's pleasure.
Hmm.
Maybe it's
Hmm.
something pleasurable.
Yeah.
Like planning something. It doesn't have to be long. Like, lots of times between my sessions, I get up and I dance. I'll put on a song and I'll, shake it out and move it and dance, right? Because that feels great. I have an amazing view of two coasts and I'll just look.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's just the fun, involving fun again. It's like, you look at children, they're so free and loving life and just being able to embrace the moment. And it's like at some point, we as adults think that that's not available to us anymore. But it's so important to be intentional and bring that back into our lives to embrace the benefits of it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I 100%, not my husband, my son is so obsessed with yo-yos.
Mm.
And he just loves them, and he is always learning how to do them. And I just think about those moments as a parent where we're like, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's like, oh my gosh, I am part of the perpetuating him getting out of his freedom
Yeah.
and fun, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, how do I allow him to have that incorporation of, like, you know,
Mhm.
yo-yo fun while he is doing his work? I don't know.
Mhm.
It's kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're all guilty of that, especially as parents, where you have some of these subconscious beliefs, you start seeing them creeping up, like, oh, you got to be productive, you got to do more things. And then, you could see how this can very much continue on. But it's so beautiful to have that recognition and that awareness of like, oh, wait, no, it's okay for him to have that present moment. I know I'm guilty of that too with my kids. I'm like, okay, no, we gotta do this. And it's like, okay, they're actually in the right. They know how to just embrace life and enjoy it. And it's like what we can really
Yeah.
learn from our kids is just amazing.
It
Absolutely amazing.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even how they're with food, right? They
Hmm.
know how to eat. They know what, they know when they're full. They enjoy
Yeah.
it,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, and there's something to really learn there
Hmm.
from our
Absolutely.
children.
I'd love to go into that a little bit more because again, what you talked about before with that some of that like dissociation and suppressing those hunger cues. How can we start to tune into what our body is telling us so that we know like, oh, that is hunger or that is fatigue. And when you feel like you're maybe it just is kind of a mishmash because you've
Right.
suppressed it for so long.
Yeah, it's all one big experiment,
Hmm.
right? And I think that when we use curiosity, that can be helpful. It's not about getting it right.
Hmm.
It's about, am I hungry? Because there's that hormone ghrelin. I think I'm saying it right. And
Hmm.
so ghrelin can make you feel like ghrelin is a hormone when you're tired that can make you feel like you're hungry.
Hmm.
So it's like, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I tired?
Hmm.
Right? And these are all great questions,
Hmm.
right? Other than just like, oh, I'm hungry, right? But it's like getting curious. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh no, I'm actually not hungry. I just need to go lie down for a little bit. Or I'm actually tired. I don't have time. I'm going to eat something. But that's coming from a more conscious place. So we need to start asking ourselves questions and getting curious about it. And then this is the piece. If we if we had a moment where we were listening and it wasn't right, it's okay. We have a lot of more opportunities to explore. It's like, oh, I get it. When I'm stressed out and I have a lot going on, I usually I'm a little more hungry, or I don't think I'm hungry and then I am famished.
Hmm.
So it's all about learning about ourselves, right? It's like, oh, so I need to pack more. I need to, even though I feel like I don't have enough time, I actually need to plan more ways to nourish myself.
Hmm.
Or, like, or, oh, after a big push, whatever, now I know I need to have something fun to do.
Hmm.
So I think the older we get, the more wise we become. And I think that if we come from a place of curiosity and compassion, we can let go of this idea of perfectionism,
Hmm.
right? And so, because sometimes we don't know. And if we're not even asking our bodies and we're just telling our bodies, that in itself is something we can just shift by just being like, this is all it can take. Huh, what am I feeling?
Hmm.
That's a great start.
Hmm.
What is even going on?
Mhm. Yeah.
What is even going on here?
Mhm.
Right? And
Yeah.
so, for me, like in this moment, I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. I need a little more breakfast.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? Like that's what my body is telling me right now. So when
Mhm.
we're finished here, I'm going to eat a little bit more breakfast.
Mhm. Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
am I allowed to do that? Oh, past Marla would be like, no,
Mhm.
no, you already ate your breakfast.
Mhm. Yeah.
You are done until later.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And some people need some boundaries, right? So some people, there can be some boundaries around food that
Mhm.
can actually really serve someone, right?
Mhm.
The person who is constantly grazing.
Mhm.
and constantly obsessed and constantly kind of hand to mouth. So I'm not saying that those things aren't helpful,
Mhm.
right? To have
Mhm.
some boundaries depending on where we are in our journey. I know if I've had that experience, that same experience of just like, you know, almost can't stop, and it's the constant grazing.
Mhm.
And then it's like, well, I think I just ate, but I feel like I'm hungry. Am I just stressed out? And what I've noticed is it's usually because I haven't completely fed myself.
Mhm.
I've come from the place of just like, just feed yourself just enough,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes I'll be like, eat the food, Marla, eat
Mhm.
the darn food and move
Yeah.
on with your life,
Mhm.
right? Get the nourishment, have it ground in.
Mhm.
So, kind of touching on some different parts that people may be saying, like, well, that's not my problem, right?
Mhm.
And so there are so many different tools, especially depending on where we are in our journey with food
Mhm.
and where we are in our cycle of life and where we are in the season of our life as far as a stressful time, holiday season, like
Mhm.
depending on what's happening. There's so many practical ways to be with ourselves, and there's so many loving, compassionate ways. And there's also some ways to even realize, like, where's this food stuff coming from? Like, where did this originate?
Mhm.
Right. And one of my expertise is actually being able to go back and being like, oh, I see that this started around this time in your life, and that is coming from this wound.
Mhm.
And when we find those places and can connect them to the food and to our body, a lot of healing can take place.
Mhm. Absolutely. And then I love the questions that you have people ask themselves and just like what do I need in this moment? And I think it's so important, versus like just telling you this is what you need. And it's like if you approached a kid like this, a kid said, I'm hungry, you're like, and you're as a parent, you're like, no, you're not, move on. Like how that kid would have feel, be like unheard, unseen, and they would like want it even more. But like what do you need in this moment? If you treat yourself like that child, like how does that feel? Like, okay, what do you need? Let me listen to you. Let me honor you in this moment. It's like such a difference in even when you're feeling that energy of like that control, domineering energy versus like, okay, let me see what we can do with this and how can we learn from this? And like that curiosity that you're talking about, it's a whole different energy. And then when you add that self-compassion into it, huge difference in that and being able to give yourself some of that love that you are longing for in that.
Yeah. I mean, compassion goes a really
Mhm.
long way. And
Yeah.
that's what I tell people. It's not just like a nice idea,
Hmm.
it actually works. So for the person who is binge eating, the person who is emotionally eating, the one who can't stop, the one who can't stop restricting, when we're in those behaviors, shame is so palpable,
Hmm.
right? And we think like, oh, we deserve to make ourselves wrong. I don't deserve compassion, but it is in those moments when we bring our self-compassion. What I have found, Kelly, is that is how the behavior begins to shift,
Hmm.
right? It's bringing compassion to those moments. I have a client who was just like, why can't I love myself? Why can't I love myself and stop binge eating? I'm like, no, you love yourself in spite of that. You love yourself because you're binge eating. You love yourself because you're not, like, it doesn't mean you don't love yourself. It just means that that is the way your body feels safe right now. It still feels like it needs to go to binge eating. And so we don't want to make that part of you wrong. We want to get curious to what's underneath there,
Hmm. Yeah.
because some of these behaviors, we're like, what the heck am I doing? I
Mhm.
know better than this.
Mhm.
I am a smart, intelligent woman person, and I know that there's no reason I should be doing this, and yet we are. And when that happens, it's usually because there was a part of us that is not feeling safe.
Mhm.
It's a younger part of us. It's a part of us that still feels like it needs that behavior.
Mhm.
So when we begin to look at the different parts of us and begin to bring compassion to that part of us, wow. I mean,
Mhm.
healing is exponential.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's such a huge differentiator. I think so many of us can get stuck in that, like, when I stop, binge eating, or when I stop this behavior, then I can love myself. But it's so
Right.
important to do it now with all your parts, and that you are whole, and this is all just information for you to learn from, not to be shameful of. And I think that's
Yes.
a beautiful message to anyone who's experiencing that. For someone who is listening right now and maybe has not even started to navigate this, what would be your recommendation, the first step? What's something they could do today to start making room for some healing in their life?
I think the concept, what I shared earlier that I wrote about in my book, Befriending Yourself, I think is something that if you start thinking about on a regular basis, because it is such a tangible tool. Like in this moment, how would my best friend be with me?
Mhm.
When I'm feeling this way, what would my best friend say? How would my best friend hold me? How would I, be cared for? Because I feel like we've all had really good friends
Mhm.
and we've all had friends who are not very nice. And we're like, I'm done with you. Right.
Mhm.
And then we begin to look at ourselves and be like, am I being a friend to myself? Am I an enemy? Am I like, is food a nemesis? Am I my own worst like enemy? And begin to look at that and begin to change that behavior. That's when you can see some major things change. Now, specifically, I would say, how does your best friend speak to you? And if you're talking smack to yourself on a regular basis and you talk that way to your best friend, they're not going to be your best friend anymore. They're not
Mhm.
going to trust you. They're not going to want you around. It's the same thing with yourself, right? So you need to make sure that you're looking at how you're talking to yourself and being kinder and being more compassionate. Now, sometimes these voices that are in our head that are really loud, we want them to shut up,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes they're loud because they have something else they want us to know. Like
Mhm.
when I hear a voice that's like, and I'm just like, stop it,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Mhm.
like that voice is telling me like I'm not I'm upset.
Mhm.
So when we think about like that with a friend, and if you've ever had that moment with a friend where their friend is just like, rah, 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 and you were like, are you all right?
Mhm.
Right? Like you don't go to the word, you just go straight to like, what's going on here? And that's the same thing we can do for ourselves when we're hooking on something, we're thinking something mean, mean, mean. It's like looking like, okay, am I okay? What is actually going on here? This voice is wanting to get my attention to let me know that I am feeling upset, I'm angry, I'm discouraged, I'm disappointed, I'm in fear, right? And so it's not just about being happy, happy, happy and always saying loving things to ourselves. It's actually acknowledging when we are upset that we can create space for that
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
actually get curious about that.
I love that. I love that, again, that idea of, being your friend and being able to treat yourself in that respect and see yourself in that perspective. So I absolutely love that. And for somebody who wanted to get your book and connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I think everywhere, good place to go is to my website, loveyourbodyloveyourself.com. You're going to find the book there. You're going to find my free Breaking the Cycle of Emotional Eating. It's a course. It's free, but I give a lot of good stuff in there.
Mhm.
And then there's also an opportunity to apply to do a one-on-one session for free there. So that's an option. You can check out my TEDx talk. That'll kind of go deeper into my story. And then I'm at Instagram, Love Your Body, Love Yourself Always. And feel free to message me there. Let me know what's going on. I'm dealing with this. Like, how do you manage that? Like, we need to support each other.
Mhm.
We need to know that we're not doing this alone. And so this is, even that moment of like reaching out and saying something is healing, right?
Mhm.
It's a healing moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put everything in the show notes. So if you're listening, definitely check out the show notes. And thank you so much, Marla, for everything you shared today, for sharing your journey, your wisdom you've learned along the way, and just for being here and being an advocate for such an important topic. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all that you're doing and all the wonderful, just so much knowledge and wisdom that you bring. So,
Oh,
so
thank you.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. And again, for anyone listening, if you found value in this or you know somebody who could benefit from it, definitely share this episode. Make sure this gets around. Like we said, just being able to share this is so therapeutic to someone who maybe feels very alone in their journey. So